Hello and welcome to Tash Talks, the chat show where we sit down with the most inspirational female entrepreneurs and leaders in the UK today. Today's show is all about bootstrapping, investment and fundraising, and I'm joined by two incredible women, Lucy Cohen, the founder and CEO of Mazuma Money, and Laura Rudoe, the founder and CEO of Evolve Beauty. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce my guests, Lucy Cohen from Mazuma Money and Laura Rudoe from Evolve Beauty. Welcome to Tash Talks, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me too.
So Lucy, coming to you, tell us about Mazuma Money, tell us about you and what do you do?
Yeah, so Mazuma Money is my company, co-founded with my business partner and best friend, Sophie. We've known each other since we were 11, so that's quite the story. And we figured out the other day we've known each other longer than we haven't, which is, I think, a milestone you reach in friendships when you've had them a long time. But we founded in 2006 as the world's first subscription service for accountancy. So nowadays, think of it like a streaming service, but for accounts. You've got your accountant on tap, and we do everything via a self-built proprietary technology platform, focusing really on the small and micro business market. So we're talking kind of, self-employed sole traders. That market is very much our bag because they're underserved elsewhere. So we really specialise in them.
Brilliant. And Laura, tell us about you and Evolve Beauty.
Yeah, so Evolve Beauty is my business. I set it up in 2009 and we make organic and natural and sustainable beauty products. We have our own studio, which is in Hertfordshire. I have a team of 35 people. We export to 40 countries now. And in the UK, we work with retailers like John Lewis and Holland & Barrett and Ocado. And we have certified organic, vegan and cruelty-free products. And we package them in sustainable packaging.
Fantastic. So Lucy, coming back to you and the world of micro businesses. Now you are serving a lot of clients, aren't you?
Yes, all across the UK. So we've got them as far as, we're based in South Wales, we've got them as far as Shetland. So it really does span the whole UK.
And when you look across your client base down at a very small business level, because like you said, it's mostly solopreneurs and what up to what size companies do you tend to work
Our
with?
sweet spot is kind of sub £1 million, kind of fewer than 10 staff. But honestly, that's when we look at the small business market, we say there are 6 million small businesses in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, these are the entrepreneurs of Britain, aren't
Absolutely. They're the lifeblood. They're the ones that, they're paying the taxes, they're employing the people, they're taking on the apprentices, they're taking the risks. And a lot of them are doing it without financial backing. They're literally reinvesting in their businesses, a lot of the time making huge sacrifices for them. And it's just an area that I'm really passionate about. The whole idea for Mazuma came from observing my family. They're all actors, dancers, creatives. My huge rebellion was getting a proper job and being an accountant because there was nothing else I could do to shock them. That was it. But I saw the stress that kind of tax thing caused them because it's, they're brilliant, beautiful, talented people, but horrible at finance. But why would they be any good at it? Because that's not what they're trained in. Went to the Royal College of Performing Arts, not to accountancy school. And I just think it's absolutely wild that we expect small businesses who have a unique ability and have a business based around their talent, we somehow expect them within our tax system to master figuring out doing their own accounts as well. So it's just an area I'm clearly massively passionate about. And I think they get kind of short shrift in terms of what's open to them. And I wanted to create something that allowed them to access good financial data from accountants regularly instead of doing that once a year schlep to the accountant's office and then having all the uncertainty around what's my bill going to be, how am I going to pay it? So yeah, it's the market we work in, and like you said, they're the lifeblood of the economy.
They really are. I mean, when you look at entrepreneurship across Britain, the majority of entrepreneurs are running these small sub £1 million businesses. And I think
absolutely,
because of social media, we're all conditioned to think that unless it's like, 10 million, 5 million or whatever, then it's not valid. Whereas in actual fact, all of these businesses are each valid and all of them contributing.
Yeah, that is, of those 6 million businesses, most of them
are sub 1 million.
Absolutely. Most of them are sub $500,000, and those businesses send kids to school, put food on the tables, pay their taxes, employ apprentices, pay off mortgages, all that kind of stuff. Really important stuff for the economy. And they don't get the recognition they deserve.
But you must also have a great oversight of what people haven't learned, say in the school system, as they embark on their adult life and possibly move into entrepreneurship. What do you see, like speaking generally across your clients, that they don't know that you think they should know?
Well, honestly, it's I think it's absolutely criminal that our education system doesn't really cater in any way until you maybe get up to, say, A level, when you might take business studies or something, or you might maybe do accountancy at that level.
Yeah.
But they should be learning those skills from, primary school age. Tax affects everybody. We live in a UK economy that is funded by tax paid by the British people. Whether you're employed or self-employed, tax is going to affect you in some way.
Yeah.
Why aren't we taught about it, really? It's this kind of thing that happens to you when you get your first payslip and you wonder who's taken all your money away and where on earth does it go?
I remember that feeling.
Right?
I so remember that feeling. Everybody knows that
who's
feeling.
Got my money?
You're like, that's not fair. I wasn't expecting that.
What on earth is NI? Why am I paying it? We're not taught that as a population, which I think is absolutely, like I said, criminal. And I see that fall into financial literacy when people start running businesses. You get somebody who's talented at something, who has a passion for something, starts making money out of it, it grows, they maybe take on some people, and suddenly they're faced with all these different returns to do, different people to pay, taxes to collect, because let's face it, when you run a business, you do end up being an unpaid tax collector for HMRC. Yeah. You have to collect the tax and pay it over on behalf of the people. And they just don't know why or how to do it. And I just think if we had a level of education about that and it was kind of woven into the education system, and I'm talking from a really young age here, I'm talking about from primary school level, that understanding of it, because it forms part of what we do as a society, paying taxes to help build a community and society that benefits everybody. It's just crazy that we don't know about that stuff, and that then you're hit with it. Suddenly you're in a business and you think, well, hang on a second, what are all these different taxes I have to pay?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how am I supposed to handle it? On top of running a business being famously tricky anyway.
Yeah, I love that, famously tricky.
Yeah.
Which brings me on to my next question, because as well as supporting all these micro businesses that are your clients, you're obviously a female entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But in a space where there's not very many female entrepreneurs, I mean, do you want to share the stats? Because it's quite, I don't know if it's surprising or not, but it shows, what you've achieved.
It's depressing, I think, rather than surprising. So I've spent the last year I work in the accountancy space and the technology space, and I've really focused this research on the accountancy space. And I started looking around me as a female founder of a fairly large firm now and thinking, well, hang on, where are the other ones? Like, why am I still here 18 years after starting my business? Why am I still the only woman in so many of these rooms? Like, what's going on? So I started digging into the data, and a really kind of brief overshot of it is there are 94,000 accounting firms in the UK. Granted, a lot of those will be kind of sole practitioners, but that's the stat. When you dig down into the number of firms that have at least one female director, only 0.6% turn over more than £1 million. And then when you look at the number of female-led firms that are solely female-led, according to data as at this point in time, there are 43 in the whole UK. That's it. And I just think that
out of 96,000.
Out of 94,000 firms, there are 43 female-led firms that do over $1 million. I picked $1 million because it's an emotive number, and I could have picked any number. But when you start going up in that number, we're talking a handful, and you go up a little bit more, and it's just us.
It's just you. This is firms doing over 3 million.
Over 3 plus. It's kind of, we can't find any others. And I think that just talks about a huge pipeline problem, about we still have a very male-dominated space when it comes to access to accountancy qualifications and being able to set up and then grow. I think that the barriers are still very much there for women in that space, and I am absolutely determined to bring some of those down.
Fantastic. So Laura, coming on to you in Evolve Beauty, tell us when you started the brand and where it's got to today.
Yes, so I started in 2009. Actually, I started working on it in 2008. The month of the financial crisis was the month I decided to leave my job and start my own business. Of course, I didn't know that was all going to happen. And that was the same month I got pregnant with my eldest child as well. So, which was an amazingly great surprise. And that meant that the summer of 2009 was when Daniel arrived, and then in the autumn we launched Evolve. So I had a tiny baby, and we launched into John Lewis nationwide and Whole Foods and Planet Organic, and I was juggling, I don't even know how I did it actually. And at that point it was just me, and I'd started the business with this seed investment from my parents of £60,000. And I've bootstrapped the business. I've never taken any investment, and I've grown it to being in 40 countries and having 30 people in the team.
So it's no longer just you.
It's no longer just me. And about 10 years ago, we brought the manufacturing in-house. So initially we didn't have it in-house. And then eventually that really was a really good decision, because it meant that we could really make the business lean. So suddenly we could have, instead of making a few products and having to make lots of them with our contract manufacturer, we could suddenly experiment and have lots of different products. We changed our packaging at that time, and that was when the business really started to take off. So from being really a very small business, not bringing in an income for me, every year it went on that classic hockey stick from 2015 to 2020, and it went from sort of 100k to about 5 million in about 5 years. So, yeah.
Incredible. And just, I think that vertical integration of the supply chain and how that was a turning point for you. I mean, there were two things that happened at the same time, the rebrand and your ability to test new products, wasn't it? Your ability to sample
and I think
out.
they both played a big part. And I think having the right packaging and having product market fit is very important. And having our sort of very apothecary style packaging with a simple label was a key factor. But I do also think having the ability to launch many more products and run product experiments and be able to just really put all of our ideas into practice was really, really important. And we're flexible in lots of different ways. So we can, if you get a big order of something in, we can suddenly make some of that. But also it means we've got complete control over our supply chain. And so that's enabled us to get lots of certifications. So we wanted to have organic and natural, vegan, cruelty-free because of our focus on having natural, sustainable products. And so we're completely the masters of our own supply chain. We know exactly what's in the supply chain. We can source things. And when you work with contract manufacturers, you really can't do that. And we don't really talk about it enough, but we are really, really innovative. We have our own formulator. Really, innovation is at the heartblood of what we do. We have a panel of over 6,000 people. And every time we launch a new product, we send out products to this huge panel and people try the product. So there's a real kind of co-creation element of what we do. And so last year we launched 19 products, some of which were for spa and the rest were for retail. So we're incredibly innovative, and I don't think we would be like that if we're working with a contract manufacturer, because we work at speed, we've got really good insight, so that's the business model that we found to be really, really successful for us. But it all came from really tiny beginnings. So in 2015 we had a little tiny studio and a table. In fact, it was about as big as this room, so it sort of had one table in the middle and we were sort of making everything. And we've really gone up from the beginning. We know all of the steps. At that point we were 3, and my ops director and me and the lady who helps with products, my product head of product, were the only 3. And so we know exactly how every single role in the business works because we've done those roles ourselves. And we've bootstrapped every step of the way. So any problem that comes along now, we can solve it because we've got that in our DNA as a brand.
That's fantastic. And how important do you think it is in terms of growing a brand to have new products moving through? Because I certainly feel over the last few years, brands are launching a lot more products. And there's a lot more talk about MPD, as it's called in the industry,
yes, it is.
being almost like a marketing activity or definitely a growth lever. Once you had the freedom to create and then co-create as well, which is immensely powerful.
Yes.
How important do you think that was to where you've got to today?
I think it's very important, and I think there's a few reasons why we do NPD. So sometimes it's filling a gap in our portfolio. So we're thinking, well, which products do we have, and do we have a product that will meet everyone's needs? And we're actually still filling in those gaps, and we're sort of coming to the point where we do have most products that we want to have, but that's been a sort of a project of ours. Then there's new innovations that come in. So there'll be new materials, particularly because we focus on natural and organic. 15 years ago, there were a limited number of materials, and now suddenly there's more and more. There's thousands of materials. We look at the database that Cosmos have, which is our certification body, and there are thousands on there we can choose from now. So there'll be something really exciting, like a new material will come on, and suddenly we'll want to integrate that into the product. And so that's really great because we can kind of keep up with the latest in green science, which is sort of something we really want to do to give those results to customers. And then also we'll be innovating on formats as well. So for example, we recently launched a powder-based cleanser because having waterless products is something that is really helpful from a sustainability perspective. So we're always trying to innovate in one way or another. It's either on results or it's on the format, or we're just trying to deliver results to someone where we didn't have a product in that category. And I think because we're product people, we'll always be tinkering with the product. So whether we're launching a new one, whether we're updating something, which we're also doing, we'll always be looking at that, and we'll always be thinking about that, because at the heart of it, when we start talking about products, everyone in the room gets excited at Evolve. That's what really gets us all going. That's what we do.
Fantastic. So both of you have bootstrapped your businesses. Lucy, I know you've recently taken on investment, but after a significant time
Very
of business.
long time. Yeah.
And both of your businesses are not new businesses. They've both been around for a period of time. I think due to social media, everyone thinks, and I get the view that everyone thinks that you start a business and you're an overnight success, and the next thing you've made 100 million. Just let's talk about the principles of bootstrapping and why that worked for you.
Yeah, so we started in 2006. So myself and Sophie, we were 23. We started from my spare bedroom. We used to have to share a laptop because we didn't have enough money for 2 laptops. And the internet was a very different place back then.
Yeah.
We're pretty much just out of dial-up. The whole world was a very different space. I remember the financial crash vividly. As you said that, I was like, oh, I remember that so much. We couldn't get a credit card. We couldn't get an overdraft. We couldn't get any money to finance our business. So because of the fact let's face it, we were young, we were women in a male-dominated space, the financial crash had just happened, we couldn't get our hands on any cash. We had to make sure that everything had an ROI. Absolutely every activity we did had to benefit our bottom line, otherwise our rent wasn't going to get paid and we were going to get kicked out of our houses. And it was literally doing that over and over and over again for about a decade, until it really started feeling like I think anyone who runs a fairly large business, when I say feeling like a real business, because it still feels like it's held together with like sellotape and glue sometimes. It doesn't feel like a real business. And it started to feel like a real business when you can start having a quality of life and go, okay, I'm not really scrimping this month. Learning to bootstrap has meant that we've remained really creative with all of our marketing activity, with all of our sales activity. Even now, where I now employ a head of marketing and I've got a sales team and stuff like that, I'm still there going through, I want their metrics, I want the reports, I want the ROI, I want the customer acquisition cost, I want all those figures, because I don't want to allow that department. It's so easy to let that part of the business get bloated. It's so easy to make mistakes, and if you've got a load of cash in, it doesn't matter if you make loads of mistakes, but you can't afford to do that when you can't pay your bills. And that bootstrapping thing means that you get very focused on what works, what doesn't, and it's you test 2 things, winner stays on, and that's what you do. It's not sexy. It's not as sexy as social media makes it look. You're not in private jets and doing stuff. You're doing really boring things over and over again until eventually they make some money, and that's most of business.
Yeah,
really,
fantastic.
It's not that exciting.
And Laura, you've talked about how if you'd had more money, you just think you would have made more mistakes. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I think that if you have more money and you've got a big investor who wants you to grow faster, I think the temptation is to take really big risks. But I think when you're working with really what is still my money, because I still own the business, I'm thinking about every decision a little bit like you're saying, is this a good investment decision? And I think that stood us in really good stead. In the last few years, investors have become much more nervous, and a lot of investor-led and invested businesses have had to end up thinking about profitability a lot more.
I know, I mean, the shock, they have to think about profitability, but they do.
We will be thinking about it. We've been profitable since 2017, and we run all of our digital ads on at least a break-even basis on first order, which means we're not losing lots of money every time we're acquiring customers, and in all the things we're doing, and we're always trying to make sensible decisions. It means we've probably grown maybe slower than some of those businesses, but at the same time the growth is really underpinned with real customers who really like the products, and we've got this amazing really loyal customer base of customers who come back, as well as lots of new customers coming in. So I think it drives really good business practice to be bootstrapping early on in the business life. But I think it does depend which sector you're in. So we were able to do it in the sector I'm in, and I was also able to do it because in my family, my husband was supporting us financially, and I have to remember that that was part of the reason why I didn't have to take money out of the business early on. And now he's doing a startup and I'm supporting the family. So we've sort of taken it in turns to be entrepreneurial, and I still am entrepreneurial now, but my business is now bigger and I'm able to take a salary out of it.
But I think that approach has stood you in good stead, because now, I mean, the things that, you mentioned the word good business there, and I tend to think a good business should be profitable, but lots of people tell me that that's not necessarily the case. But that has stood you in good stead, because now you're in a situation where the business is able to support your husband's startup, is able to support your family. Plus, you have a lot of interest in your brand, don't you? Because I think in the space of consumer brands, where so many have lost a lot of money, it's quite unusual to find a profitable one selling in all these countries around the world with products that people love.
Yes, so I think, at some point we might take money. It's not that we never will,
No.
but early on, I didn't feel that I was ready, and I felt a little bit like, I needed to get the idea off the ground, and I didn't have product market fit. So I felt like that all needed to happen. And I was also having our children during that time and juggling everything. And then once everything started taking off, we suddenly didn't need money because the business is cash generative. And so until now, I haven't needed to raise, because I've actually got some cash in the business. Now that could change if something different happened, if we had to scale up and we launched into a really big retailer. And so I'm not going to say we never would take money. If we needed it, we would. But why would you take it if you didn't need it? Because why would I want to, give away bits of my business for no reason? And I'm lucky. I'm in a lucky position, and I love being the mistress of my own destiny, because I think also initially I didn't feel that investors would be aligned with my very sustainable and ethical positioning. I also didn't have an exit point in mind, because I'm just loving running my business so much. I just wanted to keep on doing it. And as soon as you decide to take money, you have to at some point think, well, your investor needs to get their money out. So how is that going to work? And so now I think it's very different. Now there's a lot more investors and a lot more businesses who are all interested in what I've been interested in for 15, 20 years, which is ethical consumer products. And that space has just really exploded and completely changed over the time I've been in the industry. So now there were loads of investors who were quite interested in that space who I'm talking to.
That puts you in such a strong position though, right? It means you've got all of that knowledge of the market, where you've got, you're the incumbent, but in like a really good way, because you've got all that knowledge and all that fit and a profitable business. I'm not surprised people are knocking your door down, and you can be quite smug and be like, well, not yet.
I'll just wait till we need the money until it's the right time for us.
And I think you've got to know what you're going to do with the money, haven't you?
Well, that's the point. So, it could be that we had a big scale up and an expansion plan. But honestly, if someone in my team comes to me with a good idea and a good ROI, I'll just say, sure, let's go and do it. And we'll do it anyway, because we've got the money to do that. So it will only be, much further down the line if I want to, do something else one day. But honestly, I'm really loving what I'm doing. So I'm not ready to do that yet.
And how does it feel now you're supporting the family? And also, I think it's great you referenced the position you were in, where your husband was able to support you so that you didn't have to take money from the business.
And not everyone has that luxury.
Is in that,
And so I know that was really lucky. And as a family, that's meant that we've each been able to have the pleasure also, because I do really find it a pleasure to have my own business. I love it. So I feel very lucky that I was in that position and I was able to do what I've done with my career. And it's been lovely to then also be able to contribute to the family, because you then don't have that guilt of thinking, oh, am I just a drain on the family? I'm not actually contributing.
Was that how you felt in the early years?
I should never have felt that, because I was also having children and juggling everything. So of course I was always contributing. But I'm now able to contribute financially as well as all the other ways, which did feel good when the mortgage started being paid from the business. I did feel quite pleased that I could contribute.
And Lucy, you've just done a raise. So you've gone from bootstrapping to a certain point in time to raising. So what sort of triggered that? And do you have a plan now to exit? Is that the case that's happened because of investors coming in?
Well, it's exactly what Laura said. There had to be a point of raising. And for us, it was that we built our own technology. And that's one of the spaces where it's very hard to develop technology at the rate of cash. If you're only developing technology out of profits, that's a really hard thing to do. So we made the decision, look, we know this tech platform has got way more application in the wider market than we originally thought. We originally just built it for ourselves, and actually it's got applications far beyond what we thought. It works incredibly well as the engine that kind of runs everything we do in terms of creating efficiency for us. So we really wanted to pour more into that engine to make that engine more efficient, and that involved having to raise money to do it. Tech people are expensive resources, and they're not going to ROI for a very long time, and you have to have the resources to kind of cushion that. So we went down the route of a raise. We were really careful about who we chose to partner with, because they do become a part of your business. They will potentially have a board seat, they've got voting rights, all that sort of stuff. So we were very careful and selective about who we went for. And we've now got a kind of investment from people who are very aligned with what we want to do. They describe themselves as patient capital, even though I'm not that patient, and I've got really high growth plans over the next 3 years. But we had to know what we were doing with the money. We had to have a very clear purpose. Otherwise, like you said, you'll just end up taking risks or trying things out, making expensive mistakes, and 3 years down the line wondering, oh, where did the money go? Well, I've frittered it away, and I'm in no better position. Yeah. So we're very, very targeted and precise about what we want to do with it. And I think it comes from the fact that we bootstrapped for so long, that we learned the hard way. We were kind of brought up in the trenches of it, but that's where we cut our teeth, like throwing another analogy. But actually it's serving us really well now, because our board information, our data, all that kind of stuff is actually really valuable. And we get feedback saying, actually, the data we're putting out is kind of way above and beyond what you'd expect that we should be doing, but it's all so important for us to make the right strategic decisions so that money provides a return.
And if you go on LinkedIn is full of content about how women hardly get any of the venture capital VC money, which is going to be true, and how difficult it is for women to raise money, and how, one of our guests on Tash Talks gave a talk at the United Nations, and she said, stop sending us for mentoring. We just want, just give us the money. I don't need mentoring. I just need the money.
That drives me mad. I actually find it really patronising. I think it's really patronising to say to him, we'll send you for mentoring.
Or we'll send you to our female founders breakfast or something like that.
Just give me some money. Let me return it for you. Yeah.
But how did you find that when you were going? Because you were also the only woman running an accountancy firm of your size in the UK. So you're in a very male-dominated niche, let alone bringing in a tech element to it.
Yeah, I'm straddling two very male-dominated spaces. Yeah. I won't lie, I found myself as the only woman in a lot of rooms, and every single investor I spoke to was male. And I think that speaks to where historically over generations wealth sits, because of opportunity to be able to create wealth as a woman naturally there. I've invested in businesses because I'm not a huge scale, but because I'm a big believer that I do have resource to it. As a woman, I should invest in other businesses to kind of build that network of female investors. And currently it sits at just under 2% of VC funding goes to women in the UK, which is tragic, because women don't lack ambition. They're just as capable. They have business plans that are executable, and they make for really good investment partners. So just give us some money. Just give us the money and let us wow you with what we're going to do with it. Stop sending us for mentoring. We don't need it.
And Laura, in the talks you're having, you are in a fortunate position in that, you don't need the money, which I think, again, comes from the way you've bootstrapped and built the brand over time. So this is not an overnight success business. How long did you have it before your kind of 5 years of growth?
So we'll be 15 this September.
Yeah. So you had 10 years ahead of
about sort of 5-6 years of getting product market fit, and then and 10 years beyond that. So I think it took at least 10 years to have the second McDonald's in the franchise. So you always have to remember that when it isn't a tech business, physical products do take a long time to build businesses from. People need to try them, and then they need to actually share what they've tried, and that takes a while to filter through. You can accelerate it now, and everything's going faster than it used to go, and it's amazing how social media and Shopify and things have democratized everything. But even so, I think that for the first 5 or 6 years, I was feeling terrible about the fact it was taking so long. And I think it was my husband actually who told me that stat about McDonald's.
That's a really, really interesting stat.
That's a great stat.
Yeah, so it just takes a long time to get businesses right, or can do. And so, when you are setting up a business, it's sort of worth bearing that in mind, that it can take a while, and that's okay, because all that time it felt like it was wasted, but actually we were building this amazing capability, because when we opened the studio, we knew how to make products. So in that sort of 5 or 6 years, we actually really upskilled ourselves, and now we've got all of that IP in our own business.
But do you find when you're talking to investors and without looking for the money, obviously it's always interesting to have the conversation, isn't it? And I do believe that you should always talk with someone's interested in investing in
and
your business.
sometimes
Always
it's
have
a
the
long-term conversation.
Yeah.
So, you know, you might know them, you might be working with them for a number of years or talking to them for a number of years before you get investment. So when I'm talking to investors now, we're looking at, you know, talking about how profitability targets and growth targets and things. So we'll be in a period over the next sort of 3 to 5 years where we're sort of thinking about, you know, if we do decide to take money, what, you know, where do we want to get to before that point? And
but
so
even that 3 to 5 years is not a rush.
It's not a rush. And it isn't when, you know, it might even take a year to get investment for your business. And so 3 to 5 years is actually not that long when you think about it. And, you know, when you're making changes in the business, you put a plan in place and each year you're trying to grow and develop and things. So yeah, it does take a while, especially when you start getting into businesses where they're not just internet based and they're in physical retail. Everything takes longer.
Yes.
And it's a bit more like steering a barge now than it used to be driving a zippy motorboat around with products and everything. You know, we're working at least a year ahead when we're developing products and things. So we're already thinking about autumn 2025 when we're developing products, because you've got to get everyone all lined up and you've got to get product in, you know, into the retailers and things.
So before we wrap up, Laura, what's your final piece of advice for women thinking they're not getting far enough, fast enough, and feeling that it's all taking too long?
I think women have to remember that businesses do take a long time to build. If you build them properly, you can bootstrap a business and take your time and do it at your pace rather than having to go out and get investment. That's the way that I've built my business. But you should also be confident about your business idea. And if you do need to raise money, then go and get the money, because why aren't women getting that money? Let's make sure that they're asking. If you don't ask, you don't get, do you?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And Lucy, what about you? Final pieces of advice?
Yeah, look, very much mirroring that. You know, the first business advisor I ever went to see told me that Mazuma was a terrible idea, and I ignored him. So have the confidence in your idea. Just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. You know, innovation is about doing something new, even if you're taking an older industry and kind of reinventing it. It's not reinventing the wheel, it's upgrading it. So having that confidence in yourself, go after the money, ask for money, unashamedly promote yourself. Don't feel like, oh, I don't want to boast. Boast. Go out there and do it. Talk about how great you are. And I'm really passionate, again, as a female founder, about kind of sending the elevator back down. If you get an opportunity to speak about another awesome woman in a room, do it. Be that person, because that's how all of us, you know, this is a team event now. This kind of feminism in business isn't a solo venture. This is something that we all have to do together. Be the person who speaks about another awesome woman in a room. Make the introductions. You're a brilliant introducer of people, Tash. I love that. And that means that you meet other brilliant people in your network who will build the club that, you know, let's face it, men have had for a very long time in business. We can build that for ourselves now.
I love that. Thank you both so much for coming on. It's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.